Let's dive into the stories of MMA fighters who tragically died too soon. We'll kick things off with Anthony Johnson, a beast in the cage who boasted a 23-6 record in mixed martial arts with a whopping 17 knockout wins. Rumble spent 8 years with the UFC, racking up a 12-5 record across 2 stints and twice challenging for the UFC light heavyweight title.
He hit me so hard, and I was like, man, not only does this guy hit hard, he's very fast. So when he hit me, I fell, and I turned around, and behind me, I saw him coming chasing me. I was like, holy shit, he's coming after me. And I wasn't like completely out, but I was like, I did get stunned. That's the first time I've ever been knocked down in practice, competition, anything. Kicked me in the face a couple times too, it sucked.
After losing to Daniel Cormier in 2017, Johnson retired, but couldn't stay away from the fight game for long. Sadly, Rumble's comeback was cut short as he managed only 1 fight in Bellator before withdrawing from the light heavyweight Grand Prix due to an undisclosed illness. The UFC legend was aiming for a return to the octagon in 2022, but couldn't overcome his health struggles. On November 13th, Johnson passed away at just 38 years old. The cause was organ failure, linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis, a rare immune system disorder.
Rumble, you and John Jones, that stare down, whose idea was that? That was brilliant.
It was mine. You know, I went to the back before the stare down, and I was like, John, let's do something on the stage. And he was like, hey, I'm gonna headbutt you, and let's do the whole scene like Daniel Cormier. Dana's Mr. Billy Badass, you know what I mean? But he definitely out damn near himself.
Effective immediately, Jones is stripped of his light heavyweight title and is suspended indefinitely.
Comes just hours after the UFC's president flew to Albuquerque to learn more about the felony charges Jones faces in connection with a hit-and-run crash.
I love you. This was my last fight. I would never, ever forget you. And my man Bones right here, keep your head up, baby. All right? I know we didn't give the fans the fight that they wanted. Maybe in the next life we'll do that.
Rumble, thank you for the memories. R.I.P.
Johnson wasn't the only legend the UFC lost in 2022. Stephan Bonnar was another pioneer who lost his life due to illness. Bonnar hung up his gloves in 2014 with a 15-9 professional MMA record. After 7 action-packed years in the UFC, where he went 8-7, Bonnar earned his UFC contract following his legendary bout against Forrest Griffin in the Ultimate Fighter Season 1 light heavyweight tournament final, where despite losing, his performance was so outstanding that the UFC decided to award him a contract anyway.
Frank, Lorenzo and I have gotten together and we've decided there is no loser. And we're going to offer Stephan Bonnar a 6-figure contract with the UFC. Stephan Bonnar, Forrest Griffin come out. This fight was so small, it was at the Cox Pavilion in Las Vegas, right? During 6 minutes of that fight, 12 million people tuned in for 6 minutes of that fight. You know how crazy that is? You know what insane numbers those are? Who was there that night? Was anybody actually in the arena? People were stomping their feet in the place. It sounded like a train was going through that place.
The fight, hailed as the 2005 Fight of the Year, became iconic for popularizing MMA and was inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame Fight Wing in 2013. As a testament to the impact of that fight, Bonnar even named his son Griffin after his storied opponent. In 2021, Bonnar found himself back into the spotlight after posting videos of a heated altercation with hospital staff and police in Las Vegas, Nevada. He was visibly upset over unavailability of pain medication, which led to a confrontation that drew police intervention. A year later, the UFC legend passed away at the age of 45. The UFC initially suggested that heart complications might have been a factor, while there were rumors and speculation about drug use, especially after comments from middleweight fighter Sean Strickland. The Clark County Coroner's Office eventually confirmed that Bonnar's death was due to an accidental fentanyl overdose.
But you people that, like, after he died, you post pictures of him in support and all this, like, well, this man was losing his shit. Where were you? And I'm not saying you had to be there for him, but you weren't there for him then. Don't be there for him now, because now he doesn't need it.
He shared the octagon with Anderson, Tito, John Jones. Passing away of heart complications at such a young age of 45 is just something that is just so hard to take in.
We might not be here if it wasn't for him and Forrest Griffin in the fight they put on in The Ultimate Fighter.
Thank you for paving the way for me. I was the first woman to win The Ultimate Fighter, and I would have never been given that opportunity if it wasn't for Stephan Bonnar and his fight with Forrest Griffin putting the UFC on the map. So thank you, Stephan Bonnar. Rest in paradise, and much love and prayers to your family. family.
And the fans, thank you so much. I've spilled pints and pints of blood for you guys over the years. It's thoroughly been my pleasure. I know I'm sick in the head and I need help, but I mean it. I love you guys.
Kimbo Slice, born Kevin Ferguson, became a household name for his explosive power and street fighting prowess. Originally gaining fame through viral street fight videos, Slice transitioned to MMA and made waves with his raw, unfiltered approach to combat sports. His larger-than-life persona and knockout highlights quickly got the public's attention, and his time in Elite XC, Strikeforce, and eventually the UFC shot his popularity to unimaginable heights.
Kimbo Slice is a guy who basically got famous off of YouTube fighting in people's backyards, and a guy whom I've talked a ton of shit about over the last few years.
Unfortunately, the big man's life was cut short due to long-standing health issues, which Slice continued to ignore. On June 6, 2016, Slice passed away at the age of 42 due to heart failure. His death was attributed to complications from a heart condition, which was later revealed to be congestive heart failure. An autopsy also revealed a mass on his liver.
He was like the first viral thing in fighting when the whole internet started, you know what I mean? I mean, everybody was watching that.
Tons of views.
It was crazy.
Yeah, chronic heart condition, needed a heart transplant. The donor never came and he passed away. You know, he was about 42. No one ever told his story, really. You remember, he was a YouTube sensation.
Yeah.
Remember watching YouTube?
I remember that.
Watching this tough dude. He's exactly what you think a backyard fighter would look like. Within the first minute of meeting this guy, I'm like, holy fuck, I had this guy all wrong. Smart, charming, friendly.
Good man.
Loving. Good dude, family guy, 6 kids.
He had 6
just
kids.
wanted to stay home.
6 kids.
All he wanted to do is go home.
He was a good guy, man. I met that dude a couple times. Very nice guy. Man.
Another UFC legend that left this world early was Kevin Randleman, a former UFC heavyweight champion and a pioneer who competed in the UFC, Pride FC, and Strikeforce, as well as other promotions, where he battled some of the world's best fighters like Fedor Emelianenko and Mirko Krokop. In the UFC, the big and athletic wrestler won the heavyweight belt by beating Pete Williams at UFC 23. Randleman passed away on February 11, 2016 from complications due to pneumonia, which led to heart failure. He was 44 years old. The MMA legend had a history of health issues, including staph infections and organ failure, which may have contributed to his untimely death.
A thing like this happens. It's really upsetting.
It is. It is. He truly was a great guy. I mean, all my interactions with him where he's always laughing and smiling and hugging people. And yeah, I remember I ran into Kevin once. We were at the fights. Kevin and I ran into each other at the concession stand. And he gives me this big hug. What's up, man? How you doing, man? And then other people were coming over, and it's just fans coming over. Hey, what's up, Kevin? He's like, how you doing, man?
Yeah.
So hugging everybody and smiling. I'm like, what a fucking jovial guy.
There's a lot of wars and there's a lot of turmoil in the world right now. If everybody could just, you know, give somebody next to you a hug, or give somebody some good advice, or just give somebody a compliment, maybe the world would be a better place. You know, just show love to the next person next to you. I love all of you guys. Happy Father's Day, and God bless you.
Cory Hill was another fighter taken away early by pneumonia, a professional mixed martial artist known for his time at the UFC, and as a contestant on The Ultimate Fighter Season 5, Hill stood out for his tall and lanky frame, which is quite unique for a lightweight fighter. During his career, Cory fought 3 times in the UFC in 2008. He became well known, especially after a Fight for the Troops event where he suffered a broken leg during a fight with Dale Hart, where he attempted a leg kick that was checked by his opponent.
Keep fighting, we're tussling around in the octagon, and it wasn't until laying there, I'm on my back, I still don't really know, what it was. Then I looked up at the jumbo screen, and then it was like, oh, is that my leg? Is this really happening to me?
Hill returned a year later and fought in MMA for a few years before passing away on May 15th in 2015 at the age of 36 due to complications from pneumonia. His wife, Lauren Hill, confirmed his death, expressing her deep loss and describing Cory as a loving husband, a devoted father, and a strong role model for their children.
But like Dana White said in the hospital, he says, yeah, you achieved world status, people are gonna recognize you, but not the way you want it. I got all the fame and all the glory, and everybody knows me without any of the belts or the money or all the things that come along with being a world champion. And it was hard. It's still hard.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin the fights tonight, we would like to honor a fallen fighter, former UFC and Fight Time Promotions mixed martial artist Cory Hill, who last fought in this cage in February, passed away a few weeks ago after a short illness. He is survived by his wife of 10 years, his daughter, and his 2 sons.
Now, we all recognize that weight cutting in MMA is harsh and desperately needs reform, but it's a tragedy that such changes often come only after a life is lost. Yang Jianbing's story is a stark reminder of this painful reality. Jianbing, a promising Chinese mixed martial artist, passed away on December 12, 2015 due to cardiopulmonary failure. He was only 21 years old and had a professional record of 5-1 when he died after severe dehydration during an intense weight cutting process leading up to his bout at One Championship 35 in the Philippines. Yang had been struggling with dehydration the day before the fight, and despite being taken to a hospital for suspected heat stroke, he could not recover.
Cardiopulmonary failure due to a weight cut. Lou, just your initial thoughts when you heard the news. We never like to see this in the sport.
It's very sad, and the thing for me is how many more people have to, pass away for the community to actually really take action. More people have actually died from cutting weight versus actually fighting in the cage.
His passing highlighted the risks associated with extreme weight cutting practices in MMA, sparking discussions about athlete safety and the need for reforms, which One Championship implemented immediately by replacing strict weight cutting by hydration testing. Next up is Polish fighter Tomasz Walentek, who died fighting for Ukraine in their war against Russia.
I'm Vladimir Klitschko, and I'm addressing the entire world to stop this war that Russia has started. Just today, civilians were shot by the rockets. With special operations, civilians getting killed. Please, get into action now. Don't wait. Act now. Stop this war.
Walentek, an amateur MMA fighter, was part of the International Defense Legion of Ukraine, a group formed to enlist foreign volunteers in the fight against the Russian invasion. He died in the Donbass region due to artillery shelling, as reported by Polish news outlets.
I want to tell them they stay strong, Ukrainian people, big respect, and hopefully this war stops. We all live peace.
Walentek's passing was deeply mourned by his MMA community, with heartfelt tributes shared on social media. His coach, Piotr Jelenuski, paid a touching tribute on Instagram. Amar Suluev's death was less mourned in comparison. The former UFC fighter's career was a mix of high-profile fights and dark turns. He faced notable opponents like Chuck Liddell, Phil Baroni, and Chael Sonnen in his decade-long career, which saw him fight in both the UFC and Pride. However, after stepping away from the cage, his life took a grim turn as he became involved in organized crime, allegedly working as a contract killer. Suluev was charged in connection with 2 assassinations and a failed attempt that resulted in the death of a driver. The supposed targets were powerful Russian political figures, but Suluev never faced conviction. Witnesses and evidence failed to corroborate the charges against him, including discrepancies in eyewitness accounts and alibi testimonies. While awaiting trial, Suluev was diagnosed with stomach cancer and was granted bail in May. He died on June 27th at his childhood home in Anapa, Russia. Evan Tanner was a former UFC middleweight champion and one of the early pioneers of MMA, who was known for his unorthodox fighting style and philosophical approach to life. In the UFC, Tanner scored several notable victories, including a UFC 51 win against David Terrell in their middleweight title bout. Tanner continued to fight in the UFC until his tragic death in 2008.
I'm always looking for adventure and new stories because, it's in my nature. I'm amazed at the world. I'm amazed with the world. I'm amazed with everything that's out there. I'm amazed with going out in the desert and looking at a little rock or a little cactus or something. All the millions and billions of people out there. I'm amazed with all of it.
On September the 3rd, 2008, Tanner decided to take a solo camping trip in the desert near Palo Verde in California. He bought a dirt bike to explore the area, but called a friend to say his bike had run out of gas. That conflicted with later reports saying his bike was actually found at his campsite. Evan had planned to refill his water bottles at a nearby spring, but unfortunately it was usually dry, and he didn't know that. Temperatures soared to a scorching 48 degrees Celsius, but Evan thought he could make it back if he waited until evening to move. He even texted a friend saying to call for help if they hadn't heard from him by morning. When morning came and there was no word from Evan, his friends got worried and called the authorities. Tragically, his body was found near the dry spring with empty water bottles on September the 8th. The Imperial County coroner confirmed he died from heat exposure, likely between the 4th and 5th of September.
There's a dude named Evan Tanner. He was a UFC champion, very interesting guy, and he would do these things that he would go on a walkabout, to try to find himself, to go alone in the woods, and he did one in Death Valley. Heat stroke apparently affects your ability to literally, you can't think straight. So he couldn't figure out where the water was. But the way it's described, it's like, it doesn't matter how tough you are. It's like your brain doesn't work right. Like your memories aren't good. You can't walk right. Like you're about to die. And then he died.
Evan was my friend. Evan was my teammate. He finally gets this wild idea that he is, and this is a quote, going to get on his motorcycle and drive so far into the desert that one mistake could cost him his life. That's a quote. It was amongst the dumb ideas ever. If there's anything that we need to gain by the Evan Tanner story, sometimes it's what not to do. And when I hear this story get sensationalized in trying to tell the story, this was some kind of a young man on a journey to change his life. That's not what happened. My buddy got drunk and did something stupid, and it cost him his life. That is what happened.
Ryan Gracie's story was similar to Silueve's, a well-known Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter from a famous family of mixed martial arts. Ryan was the grandson of Carlos Gracie, one of the founders of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He had a reputation for being tough both in and out of the ring, and because of his rowdiness, he earned the nickname Bad Boy of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was his rowdy attitude that led to his downfall.
Cresceu comigo ali, agarrado, e assim dá vontade de chorar.
Vai matar, vai querer me fuder? Vai se fuder depois. Então todo mundo tem pai, todo mundo tem filho, todo mundo tem mãe. Tira filho meu que eu tiro dois teus. Avisa tua mãe também.
On December 14, 2007, Ryan was arrested for stealing and crashing a car, and then trying to steal a motorcycle to escape. Before his arrest, the BJJ wizard got into a fight and was hit on the head by the motorcycle owner. After he was detained by bystanders, the police took him to jail. While in custody, Ryan was seen by a psychiatrist who reportedly gave him several drugs to help calm him down. These included powerful antipsychotics and tranquilizers. Later that night, when the doctor had left, Ryan was found unresponsive in his cell. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The exact cause of his death wasn't immediately released, but it was believed to be related to the combination of drugs he had taken. The next couple of fighters died because of unfortunate accidents, starting with Gene Herrera, a former UFC and bare knuckle fighting championship combatant. Born in California, Herrera began his UFC journey in 2015, but after an unsuccessful career in the promotion, he transitioned to Absolute Championship Burka in 2018 and eventually made his BKFC debut in 2021. In May 2024, Herrera was riding his motorcycle on the Gandy Bridge in Pinellas County, Florida, where he attempted to pass a Jeep Grand Cherokee at high speed, but ended up crashing into the back of it, causing him to lose control of the motorcycle. The impact threw Herrera and his bike onto the road, and he slid hundreds of feet before the bike came to a stop and burst into flames. Herrera was just a few days shy of his 34th birthday, where he died at the scene. The One Championship has had its fair share of athlete deaths, but none as big as 18-year-old Victoria Lee's shocking death in 2022. The younger sister of One Championship title holders Angela and Christian Lee, Victoria was tipped to follow in the footsteps of her siblings when she made a debut in 2021 and won 3 fights in a row. In 2022, Victoria took a break from fighting to focus on high school, and late in December, she suddenly died. The news wasn't revealed until 2 months later when Angela announced her younger sister's death, but refused to reveal the reason.
You know, I knew Victoria quite well, as a person, and watching her blossom from an 11-year-old, just a little kid, clearly a prodigy, had all the skills and talent. What always struck me about her was how she's a wise, I would say an old soul, even when she was 11 years old. She always thought about life and the meaning and purpose, and she always said she wanted to use her life to help the world. Just the sweetest, most kind, most selfless. She was an angel. She was the angel of the Lee family. I couldn't sleep for many days and think about nonstop all day and messaging and talking to them and the family.
The One Atomweight champ later revealed that Victoria took her own life. Media reports confirmed Angela's version, claiming that Victoria wanted to focus on her studies and didn't want to fight, but after she was pressured by her parents, she took the impulsive decision to end it all. The next few fighters in this video were brutally murdered, starting with Ryan Jimmo, a Canadian mixed martial artist who fought in the UFC's light heavyweight division from 2012 to 2015. Jimmo was known for his explosive power and charisma, and he made a memorable debut at UFC 149, where he knocked Anthony Perosh out cold in just 7 seconds. A year after his final UFC bout, Jimmo's life was cut short in a tragic incident on June 26, 2016. After a verbal altercation in a parking lot in Edmonton, Alberta, Jimmo was struck by a truck in a hit and run.
The victim of a fatal hit and run on White Avenue last night has been identified. Former MMA wrestler Ryan Jimmo is dead. His friends and fans commenting on social media, saying how much he will be missed. Jimmo, who went by the name The Big Deal, was 34.
The UFC veteran was taken to the hospital but succumbed to his injuries. The truck driver was later arrested and sentenced to 8 years in prison for manslaughter. Michael Falcao was another notable name in the MMA world who got murdered. The Brazilian boasted a record of 40 wins and 19 losses and won no contest, and he made a mark in the sport with his aggressive fighting style. His UFC career, however, was brief due to legal troubles back in Brazil, which led to his release from the promotion. After his UFC stint, Falcao continued his career in Bellator, where he shone brightly by winning the Season 6 middleweight tournament. Unfortunately, his time in the spotlight was marred by further controversies and legal issues, including a brawl at a gas station that led to his release from Bellator.
Mas acaba agredida no rosto. Michael Falcão está com o também lutador Cauê Mena. Dentro da loja, os dois saem no soco com um grupo que protegia a jovem. A briga continua do lado de fora da conveniência, no pátio do posto, até que esse jovem de casaco vermelho pega um pedaço de pau e atinge os dois lutadores. Cauê Mena desmaia na hora e continua sendo agredido com chutes.
Falcao's troubled life outside the cage ultimately led to his death. On January 23rd, 2022, Falcao was stabbed outside a bar in his hometown of Pelotas, Brazil. He was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Even after 2 years, the circumstances of his death are still under investigation, and it's unclear if his attacker has been caught. Next up is Jordan Parsons, a promising Bellator MMA fighter who tragically passed away at the age of 25. Parsons had a professional record of 11 wins and 2 losses, and had been making a name for himself in the sport, where he was brutally killed in a hit-and-run incident in Delray Beach, Florida. On the evening of April 30th, 2016, Parsons was struck by a silver SUV while crossing an intersection. The impact was so severe that his leg had to be amputated in an effort to save his life. Unfortunately, Parsons succumbed to his injuries and passed away 4 days later on May 4th, 2016.
I cannot even imagine how extremely difficult it is for all of you, including your friends, to not only suffer the loss of a great person, but your son, a brother, and friend. I take full responsibility for what happened and for the loss of life for Mr. Parsons.
The driver of the SUV fled the scene, but was arrested just 3 days after Parsons' death. On May 7, 2016, Dennis Wright, a 28-year-old from Boca Raton, was charged with leaving the scene of a crash causing death, tampering with evidence, and driving with a suspended license, his 6th suspension.
I would say that today has probably been the most difficult day of my life, but the truth is it was that week, that Monday, that Wednesday night hearing that Mr. Parsons had passed away from an accident that was completely my fault. I know without a doubt that if I had been driving with a proper license, the speed limit, and sober, that Mr. Parsons would 100% be here today.
Wright had attempted to have his damaged SUV repaired at a body shop, but the shop owner refused, sensing that the vehicle was involved in the fatal hit and run. Wright then stored the SUV at a security facility.
Justice has been served, so the whole team and everyone, the whole family's really happy.
He's sitting in prison, but my son is still dead. He gets to call his mom or get conversations with his mom. I don't get that, so I don't think it'll ever just be over.
In October 2016, it was revealed that Jordan Parsons had been diagnosed with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a degenerative brain disease, making Parsons only the second fighter in the MMA industry to be publicly identified with CTE, following Gary Goodridge. Moving on, Josh Samman was a UFC middleweight who rose to fame on The Ultimate Fighter 17, coached by John Jones and Chael Sonnen in 2013, where he lost in the semi-finals to Kevin Gastelum. Samman was still signed by the UFC, where he competed for 3 years until tragedy struck in 2016. On September 30th, 2016, Samman was found unresponsive in his Florida apartment. He was hospitalized and remained in a coma for several days before passing away on October the 5th. The medical examiner later ruled his death an accidental drug overdose.
It builds Josh's legacy, and he gets to still play a role in these people's journeys.
I never had any idea it would continue and continue.
Along with that ripple effect of tragedy, there's ripple effects of beauty.
He always kept us all close.
We were all in competition to make him proud, to live up to our best abilities.
You know, Josh was a storyteller. He was one of the best storytellers. Josh was not scared to tell the truth. I think this is what he would want. What we're doing is we're continuing the story that he would be wanting to tell.
Elias Theodorou was another notable UFC fighter who lost his life in 2022. Theodorou wrapped his MMA career with an impressive 19-3 record. He first made a splash by winning the Ultimate Fighter Nations middleweight tournament, earning himself a contract with the UFC. Over his 5 years with the promotion, Theodorou racked up an 8-3 record, but despite his success, he was surprisingly cut from the UFC roster after a loss to Derek Brunson. Theodorou felt the decision was due to a contract dispute, as he was still ranked among the top fighters. Between 2019 and 2021, he competed in various promotions, winning all 3 of his fights. Sadly, Theodorou's life took a turn in 2021, with him privately battling colon cancer, which tragically spread to his liver by 2022.
Elias was a wonderful individual. I was so proud to call him my son. Was 33 years old when he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. At that time, it had metastasized to his liver and his lungs.
He passed away from stage 4 liver cancer on September 11th at the age of 34. His fight with cancer was kept private, and the news of his passing shocked and saddened the MMA community.
I might start crying, but Elias Theodorou passed away yesterday. I didn't know he was sick. And to me, when things like that happen and they catch us by surprise, I think when we're caught by those moments, they're meant to teach us something. And when I think about the friends in my life, what would I say at Jody's funeral? Why am I not telling her that right now? All the great things I would say about them and how they touched my life, what they were like as a person, and the joy that they brought to this world. Type it out and just push send, or say it. Even better.
We remember him entering the UFC undefeated, winning the 2014 Ultimate Fighter Nations series. A proud Canadian, a proud representative of Canadian MMA. We send our thoughts, our love, and our prayers to his family. Elias Theodorou, just 34 years young. May he rest in peace.
Tim Hague was a Canadian heavyweight who competed in the UFC from 2009 to 2010 with a memorable debut against Pat Barry, who was submitted in the first round. After a promising start, however, Hague had his ups and downs, which eventually led to his departure. With or without the UFC, Hague continued to fight in MMA until 2016. A year later, he took up boxing, which proved to be a fatal error. On June 16, 2017, Hague participated in a boxing match against Adam Braidwood in Edmonton, Alberta, where he was brutally knocked out and suffered severe brain injuries. The heavyweight was rushed to the hospital and underwent surgery, but ultimately passed away 2 days later on June 18th. Hague's death sparked a conversation about the safety of combat sports and the need for better regulations and medical protocols to protect fighters.
Me and Dewey Cooper, my trainer, were going crazy, you know, like it's not a game, you know, like this, you know, even if a guy gets up and, you know, everybody sees the knockout and everybody goes crazy and screams, but they don't see the guy laying on the floor, you know, they don't see him when he gets up and he has to go home and talk to his wife, and, you know, sometimes you're not the same man, you know, that's very serious, you know, and sometimes it's worse than death. You know, some guys going to severe depression off one punch, you know, it's not even a career.
The final guy on the list is Alexander Pisarev, a relatively lesser known MMA fighter, tragically passed away on October 30th, 2022 at the age of 33. Pisarev, a professional with 3 wins and 2 losses, had participated in just 5 fights. His last appearance in the cage was in 2020 at RCC Road to the PFL, an event co-promoted by the Professional Fighters League. Pisarev's death made headlines due to its unusual cause, food poisoning from a poisoned watermelon that he ate along with his wife. Pisarev's wife was also hospitalized, but survived. The fallen MMA fighter's relatives claimed that he was in good health and wasn't suffering from a chronic disease. So these were the MMA fighters who died early due to one reason or another. If you liked the video, please subscribe to our channel and turn on those notifications. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.